I think this is the first time we've ever been in the movies together. No? Have we gone to the movies together before this?
Transformers.
That's what Caden was, I think. Caden mentioned that we had gone to a movie with you, and I was like, I don't remember that.
Yep. Transformers, the animal. Yeah. The animal one.
Rise of the Beast or whatever it was.
They just dropped the new trailer for Transformers 1.
Yeah, with Metatron or whatever, the big guy that eats the planets.
It looks just animated. Oh, that was disappointing.
No, then it's two different ones. Well, anyway, we are here today to discuss the movie that we did just go see together to kind of get a take on it. And I think being veterans, I think it's interesting also to kind of hear different perspectives on our takes on the movie, what we thought. And so today we are going to be discussing everything about the brand new Civil War movie that just dropped here in 2024.
You're gonna hang back.
I'm not hanging back.
One nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Best movie I never want to see again.
And we have differing thoughts on the movie and the way it was portrayed and utilized and different things. So you already said best movie you never want to see again. I think we were back from the movies maybe 5 hours and you did a post very similar to that.
Probably exactly that.
Yeah. And it got quite a bit of attention. Some people, joking around being like, well then, why'd you go see it and blah, blah, blah. But other people, interested in what it was about. And what a better way to discuss that than let you guys know that from this point on, there will be spoilers in the rest of this video.
Everything will be spoiled.
And do not watch this until after you've seen Civil War if you want to watch Civil War. But we are going to tell you our honest and true reactions to the movie. And so let's dive in.
All right. What did you not like about it?
So I had the unfortunate perception going in that it was going to be a war movie. And if that was the case, then it's probably one of the worst war movies I've ever seen.
Definitely not what I was expecting going in.
However, once I flipped the frame and was able to just be like, let's watch the movie, I realized very quickly that I was in a dystopian, almost post-apocalyptic road trip style movie. And from that point on, I was able to definitely watch it for what it was, which was a good movie. It really was. It was, the shots were great. The acting was great. The arcs were, the character building, it wasn't really much of an arc, but character building was great. They had a lot of really, deep life lessons and metaphors that we like to look for in movies. So I thought that part of it was good. But again, I came into it thinking it was going to be a war movie and an absolute opportunity for the population of America and the world to see what happens when we allow ourselves to go just a little bit further than we actually currently are right now.
Every instinct in me says this is death.
Because we are so divided, and that's ultimately what a civil war is, right? Is a complete division of an internal organization, right? Which would be the United States. And so I just thought coming in with that frame on, I thought for sure that they missed the mark with being able to really warn us and show us it's only the little things building up that lead to this thing. And so there's really no context around how the Civil War starts in this movie. And I get it, it's all by design. That's why they did it that way. But the lens I came in with being it's going to be, a very polarizing and in your face kind of awakening for the population of the world is not what I got. And so I was, again, when I walked out, I said, I feel like they missed the mark. But then again, when I put the other lens on, a solid movie for what it was.
So you mentioned you expect it to be polarizing.
In the essence of understanding how being so unable to hear other people's side and so unable to come to even terms and know, just like you and I right now don't agree on this movie, doesn't mean we're going to go kill each other or that we hate each other. We just differ on an opinion, and that's it. We just keep moving through life. I thought that that was going to be more of like the focus of what could be possible. And I do get that using the war journalists, which I thought was an amazing lens to see it through. Great choice.
Way better than newscaster.
Correct. That job in itself has a very polarizing journalism is a very polarizing job, right? And I thought that they did a great job of using them as a character to kind of be an unbiased watcher of what's happening, right? And I thought that was pretty cool. But I thought that they did, like, again, just going back to that lens of a war movie, I thought that they truly missed the mark on what they could do to like awaken us to just the brutality of what we're, we could, I don't want to say it, but we could avoid it. We could avoid it.
It wasn't brutal enough for you?
I mean, it's absolutely brutal. It was absolutely brutal. I'm just saying, I don't want to see that brutality transfer into reality. And I thought that movie, especially coming out in an election year and with the world being the way it is, so divided, even our own country so divided, I thought it would be a great opportunity to shed light on both the darkness that could possibly happen, and then ultimately turn it towards the light and have it be, something that we could achieve as a humanity. But yeah, I don't think that was where they went with it at all, and I was kind of hoping for that.
So for me, it was a horror movie.
A horror movie?
Yes.
Interesting.
Well, it was designed specifically for that way. I thought they did a brilliant job of creating the movie so it did not demonize one political faction versus the other. That's why I appreciate the fact that they didn't dive so much into that, because they really want to get their message across to both sides. And if you tell one side that they're wrong, they're immediately gonna shut that down.
Yeah.
Right? Doesn't matter which side it is. Just human nature, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I appreciate that they did it in the way that they did. The whole movie, you have no idea who the good guys are or the bad guys. Half the time, they don't even know who the good guys are or the bad guys. The whole time you're guessing, you're seeing people in uniform fighting other people in uniform. You never know whose side it is until they verbally say it. That's what I appreciate most about it. On the grand scheme of that stuff.
I think that it's fair to say that there's a lot of that going on. I also think that there's, certain scenes where it's very clear, like there are no uniforms, right? There is no like clearly divided, like you can't see based on uniform who's on what side. Because you have, good old boys rocking Hawaiian shirts taking over the college. And then later on, you have, the snipers who have been out there so long and been by themselves for who God knows how long. And they're just so bored and so out there that they're like painting each other's nails and dyeing hair and just getting crazy with it.
You don't know what side they're fighting for.
Someone's trying to kill us. We are trying to kill them.
So it's like, and then you run into probably like the most pivotal and iconic scene of the entire movie, which is why it's part of the trailer.
The shortest part in the whole movie, pretty much.
Yeah, but like the most iconic.
There's some kind of misunderstanding here. What? Well, you're American, okay? Okay. What kind of American are you?
Most talked about, and it, they're in uniform, but you don't know who they belong to until they further in the scene they do disclose, who their America is and who they believe, the real country belongs to. That part, I
don't think they really gave that away, though.
You don't think so?
No.
Based on who he shot and why he shot them, you don't think you couldn't tell like who he belonged to?
No.
Interesting. I had a very
clear.
Well, if you look at the map that they show, which is another reason that if you get that map had to get removed from my mind for this movie to make sense too, because I got Florida, right? I got Florida rising up. The good old boys of Florida are going to rise up, and so they're going to wrestle Crocs. They ain't going to let you take away their rights, and so they're going to come up and they're going to do that thing. And on the map, they didn't go up as much as they went west. So they took like Louisiana, Alabama, and so like they're basically on the verge of Texas. And then Texas becomes their own, they separate themselves. And then California separates themselves. But California and Texas, who are polar opposites, decide that they're going to join forces even though they're not attached. When it would have been so much easier for Florida and Texas just to come together, push themselves together, create a alliance that way, and start moving up. California, they could do their own thing, or they can join too. It doesn't matter. But I thought that whole piece was like, when you looked at the map, I was like, why? Like Nevada, Arizona, they stayed loyal, but California decided they were going to join Texas. Like, that doesn't make much sense. I live in Arizona. That wouldn't happen. And so that part of it kind of like shook me. I had to get rid of it and then keep moving forward. But the reason I say what I say is that the states that he was like, that's real America, like that's North America, that's the real America, were all the loyalist states, all the states that were still loyal to the original government in DC. So if he was, because he says the guy from Florida, I'm from Florida, right? And he was like, oh, so you're a South American, like just basically throwing them in with all South Americans instead of actually a real American. And so the girl goes, she's from, I think it was Minnesota or Montana, something with an M, right?
Some century.
Which was still a loyalist state. And he was like, you know, good, you're a real American, right? So it's like, I assumed right in that moment that was who he felt was, you know, who he was loyal to.
Well, you have to think of how America is in the first place. There are people that have different beliefs all over in every single state. So that's why I didn't feel comfortable enough to make a guess to where he was from.
Oh, I don't know where he's from. I mean, he definitely seemed good old boy to me. So I would think somewhere in the hard country of our nation, but yeah, it's hard to tell. I think that's part of why, like his character is supposed to be kind of ambiguous in where he comes from, his origins, until he shows you through his actions with who he chooses to let live and who he chooses to kill, where he's from.
I don't think those actions made that clear though either.
Fair enough. That was my interpretation. So in the comments, what you guys thought, where was he from, or did it not make sense to you as well? Like, was it supposed to be up in the air? What did you guys think about that scene? One of the most iconic scenes in the entire movie.
I thought that it was, again, still intentionally vague.
Yeah. Well, I think that the thing for me too, and I'm just going to switch to this because it popped into my mind. The thing for me that didn't really read Civil War unrest inside of our country and read much more like a zombie, like post-apocalyptic movie to me, is the way that they handled the different stops along the way. I think there was no real like conversation with any organized like militia for the different, like, until the very end there is. But along the way, there isn't any like conversations where they're like, you know, Allied forces are doing this and that and this, and we're, you know, taking over this, where we could have some backstory on like what's really happening inside of this Civil War, other than DC's about to fall and we got to rush to DC before, you know, to see if the president's still there and if he has to get a story from him, right?
Do you regret the use of airstrikes against American citizens?
I just think that, again, that piece I want to.
Again, I think that's intentionally vague. I personally believe, and the reason why I appreciate it so much, is I don't think the director wanted to distract you from the carnage, the emotional connection to the characters and the loss of these characters, how brutal everything was. They want to think about, your mind is like your worst weapon.
Your only limit is your imagination.
Your imagination runs wild, and they left it open for that, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that it could run rampant and start picturing all these horror scenarios based on where they were, without giving too much on any of their political affiliation or where they're located in the United States. So it kept it very general so that pretty much everyone could relate to those things.
Yeah.
That was my take on it.
I think because they did that, they ruined a great portion of that movie that they could have made. Because the way it is set up is it's, you know, this particular president's on his third term, which means like that he's enacted absolute law, like he's taken over, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to do that. There's literally a constitutional amendment against it. And so he's enacted this. So there's no more red versus blue, Republican versus Democrat. There's no more of that. It's he says what goes, and that's why these other factions don't have taken away, because he's taken over the entire government and he was killing people, just straight out killing people. And so these other nations, they became other nations. They defect. They come out. They disconnect from the United States.
19 states have seceded.
The United States Army ramps up activity.
The White House issued warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.
Was that because, did he do the third term because the country went to civil war? The country goes civil war because
that's the kind of context I would have liked to have.
Because you just made the leap of him being in the third term is why everyone else defected.
Because they give you bits and pieces of the information throughout the movie, but there's no, if they would have given us just a little bit in the beginning, that would have set this up a little bit better. I think that the whole movie could have painted a bit better for me. However, we know that they hate the president because he's killing his own citizens, basically turning the government against his own people.
Well, no matter what side, you're turning the government against your own people.
In a civil war.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the people in the states who could take care of themselves, which would be Texas and California in the mind of this film, Florida defects. And now I guess he gets to get a third term. Again, this is the context that we don't have that would have been great to have a bit more of.
I know this is going to sound weird coming from me, but are you sure you needed more information?
I did. Yeah. For it to be, so I think they just mislabeled, they didn't title the movie correctly. For it to be called Civil War, I needed certain things to be true and I needed certain context to be available. It was so vague and so open to interpretation that you might as well have just been watching a zombie movie that was set in DC during a faction, a coup in America.
But a zombie movie wouldn't get the kind of attention we're giving it right now. I mean, right before an election.
And that's another thing, is instead of having a message that could have affected the, empathy inside of in people and change the narrative and start moving us in a positive direction, they just created a story that made them money. And I was like, I don't know about this. You shouldn't have called it Civil War. You should have named it something else.
It just normalized the conversation, though. Talk about how fucked up that would be. It put it in the minds of everybody who's seen this movie or heard other people talking about it. It's doing its job right now. It's like stealth marketing.
Do you think it's going to do any what positive can you see it doing for these conversations, right? In a world so divided, where most people can't sit at a table like you are right now and have a conversation without one of them screaming at the other or storming out. What kind of message is the movie in its current state going to bring?
Okay, I'm going to challenge you. Go to TikTok.
I didn't challenge you. I don't have TikTok.
I know, but you've got your reptile thing there. But the reason I'm asking you to go to TikTok is you will see all these open discussions, which is absolutely beautiful on TikTok, from left, right, everyone in between. It is crazy how much this has affected pop culture and our culture already. The fact that nobody's the clear villain and everyone got to see through an unfiltered lens the horrors of war. You know, as a combat veteran, how there is no real winning side in any kind of battle. But some good old boys who never went to the military but wish they did, they fantasize about that shit. Right?
Yeah.
Many people fantasize about that stuff. Hell, even active duty that never went to combat, that lusted after combat, fantasize about that. But unless you're in it like you did, I have no idea.
Yeah.
This could be why I saw it very differently, from the lens of someone who hasn't been in combat.
Of course, we're going to see it differently. and I think that that's probably one of my strongest driving forces behind the way I feel, is that the last thing I want, the very last thing, is a true civil war. Any war, because no one wins, as you said, and it's just a lot of trauma and brutality and death, and just the worst parts of people come out. And I definitely don't want to see that. And so I think I was hopeful that this movie was going to, again, go back to what I originally said, give this awakening inside of people and give them a clear lens to see, what's possible and how to, and the other path to take. And it just didn't do that for me. And so that's why I think ultimately I feel so strongly the way I do. But as a movie, as I said, it was a good movie. Like, I thought, like, as far as, like, if you want to take me on a dystopian road trip and have a little fun and show me the horrors of what happens when there is no governing body and people can truly just do whatever they want with guns and kill who they want and say the guy's an enemy just because they said it, like, you can see that in a zombie movie too. So I think that part is great. Like, I think that great movie. Just, again, I'm not going to keep beating a dead horse or keep going back over it, but that's how I feel.
Okay. So one of the parts I want to talk about specifically is the journey of the journalists, specifically the woman and the young woman.
Yes, I think that was, I just want to say something real quick and then I'm going to turn it over to you. I think that was one of the true, like, characteristics of, like, a hero's journey that we've seen in that movie, where it's the passing of the torch.
Pass me that torch.
I'm trying to think of, like, a character arc or a character. I'm trying to think of the exact word of what that's called. It's not coming to my mind, but it was one of those things that we could really attach ourselves to and see, because it's that true senior person coming up, giving the mentorship and passing the torch on to the next generation.
Reluctantly.
Yeah. So what did
she fought it?
Oh yeah, in the beginning for sure.
She did not want that little girl going on that adventure with them, and you could literally see the pain in the acting.
Yeah.
Which was absolutely wonderful. And from my perspective, every time she starts seeing the younger girl lose a little bit more of herself until she was so jaded. Well, I wouldn't say jaded, but so closed off and separated from the lens that they could literally watch pretty much any kind of fucked up situation through that lens. And that was like their safety shield. Yeah. Like, that separated them from reality.
Yeah. I think they are interesting characters in the fact that, like, the older journalist, which is Kirsten Dunst's character, is what I envision a true wartime journalist to be. Someone who's out there taking photographs on the front line, who is unbiasedly just capturing the horrors and the truth of war, right? We'll call it that, the truth of war. Where the younger character reminds me of what would happen if we had a draft like today. It would just be a bunch of people who are used to being in selfies, who are used to capturing moments with their friends and being on these, like, fun trips. Because if you notice, what is she always taking pictures of?
The wreckage?
It's usually of the other journalists that are with her. And
that was in the beginning, and then she was challenged by the mentor for the wreckage and carnage of the helicopter, the Black Hawk, right?
But yet the whole movie closes out with her taking pictures of a journalist, doing exactly what she was told not to do in the beginning and was so fixated on, right? So I think that part was truly interesting to me, because it was an accurate, in my opinion, an accurate representation of the different generational gaps of what's important.
Okay. I'm not recalling what you're talking about with taking a picture of the journalist. I know they made some crazy reference of, yeah, I would capture your dying face also.
Yeah.
She did that with her mentor.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
No, I was referring to, so if you I know you don't want to rewatch the movie, but there are many scenes that I noticed where through her lens, we are only ever seeing the reactions of the reporters' reactions to the war, basically. Like, we're getting a picture of when the bomb goes off, where the woman runs in and the bomb goes off and Kirsten Dunst turns around and takes a picture of the carnage of what just happened. And instead of taking a picture of the carnage, she takes a picture of Kirsten Dunst taking a picture of the carnage. And then later on, she takes a picture of the dude who's crazy and like loves the war, like loves the thrill of it all.
I guess aware there's like a pretty huge civil war going on all across America.
She's like taking pictures of him in the raid instead of like actually taking pictures of the raid. And then at the end, she's taking pictures of them on the raid rather than the raid itself, which ultimately also puts her in the line of fire, and then she has to do something about it.
I thought that captured the whole behind the scenes, but I thought they did not enjoy that because they didn't want to be on the center of attention. They didn't want their lives exposed the way they expose everything else.
Because it's not true, like they're not there because they're part of the action. They're not there because they affect the outcome. They're there to document. And that's why they believe that they shouldn't be in the documentation of it, only being the observer. It's like being the watcher. Like you shouldn't be involved, you shouldn't interact, you should just observe and document. That's kind of where I was coming from. And the only picture that she did say, ooh, I really like that picture, was the only picture I remember from the movie that she took where it was actually of the action. It was the one soldier trying to patch the other soldier as he was, just gotten shot. So, or he might already been dead. I don't remember the exact picture she took, but that scene.
The anguish in all those actors' faces too. They did such a good job conveying that.
Yeah. No, like the tactical movements, the sound of the rifles, like everything about the mine.
It's a rocket launcher.
Oh, we can get to that one in a minute. that was like, that wouldn't happen. He'd be dead. All of it, like I said, a good movie. I just, again, with the title, Civil War, in an election year, when we're divided, shouldn't have been called that. Should have just been called something different, and the message would have been great. But I don't know. I hear you, and I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. So let's move down the line.
Quick.
Yeah.
The horror aspect. So one of the key things that they did in the movie was they used realistic recordings of the guns. Yeah. So they put blanks in, recorded those the best that they could to incorporate the real gunfire into the movie itself.
Yeah.
Most movies, probably 99% of movies, don't do this because it causes a state of fear and panic and anxiety, because the only sounds that these weapons make are only heard in that way. So to capture the truest form causes terror in the watcher, because pretty much everyone's been around a gunshot at least once in their life, right? Either through a range or something like that.
I don't know. I would suggest that there are people who live in large cities who have never heard the sound of a gun in real life.
Just by the argument of living in a large city, I'd say they've probably heard it more from an act of violence than anybody else.
I don't believe every large city is the impoverished, gang-ridden, or crime-ridden area of the city, right? There are people who go their whole life living on the upper side and never know anything.
Okay.
I'm just saying that there's a lot more people out there who do not think or live a life like you and I have.
Fair enough.
Right.
So when we have action movies, they will alter the sound and muffle the sound enough so that we feel safe while we're watching it, so we can enjoy it for the pure entertainment and kind of have the false sense of security because, hey, it's just a movie.
Yeah. Sitting in the theater, there were certain aspects, certain scenes of that movie where, like, I was like, ooh, like I could feel it. Like my body wanted to cringe and like my anxiety would go up. And a couple of those scenes were when they were actually doing like full-on military movements with large caliber rifles. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, my body, like, I've watched plenty of movies since my time in the military, and I haven't had a body reaction like that before. And then you were telling me before we even got on about the bullets, about how they recorded them to be true and realistic. And I was like, interesting, because like I had that reaction, and I thought it was just because as I'm sitting there, I'm like, man, if this happened in America, this would suck. And so I'm coming through that lens, and like, so my body is like flinching and cringing. That I think that may have been a factor is that the bullets are true and real. So like, even though it's fictional and I can see it only happening on the screen in my mind, subconscious mind can't tell the difference.
Yes, I completely agree. That's why I thought that was so powerful in the foresight that went into making that small little adjustment to it. So upon reviewing that and adding that extra level into the movie, does that change anything for you for the intention behind it?
No, I think it was a good movie. I'm going to keep going down that same rabbit hole because that's just truly how I feel about it. And, I think also to shed some light also, like on the other side of that, to always play, I forget what it's called.
Devil's advocate?
Maybe. It did have an effect, right? And I hope that everybody who sees this movie has a level of effect, that they don't walk away from it unaffected, is what I'm saying.
Every time I survived a war zone, I thought I was sending a warning home. Don't do this.
And hopefully that effect does lead to positive change. But for me, one of the big effects that it had is that, I have been having more trouble sleeping. But I already had like a high level of anxiety. I already have, PTSD symptoms, and that I deal with on a regular basis. And so adding the current state of the world and then going to see the movie and now just being disappointed in it, I think I'm just really anxious and stressed. So like I'm not sleeping well. And I don't wish sleep deprivation on anyone, but again, I just hope that it does stir something in people that allows them to like feel enough stress, feel enough unease, maybe a little bit of fear, because those are the things that actually make us move and like change. Otherwise, like I said, man, it's the last thing I ever want to see is that truly happening.
So, based on what you just said, could you say it's true that it would make you more serious about voting?
If I thought that voting mattered, if I thought that my vote actually went into a system that was legit and ethical and was operating with integrity, and that it actually affected the outcome of what was going to happen, I would vote, no doubt. I, however, do not believe that. I believe regardless of if every person in America showed up and voted, I think that the outcome has been predetermined anyway. We don't get to see what those votes are. And so they can just be tallied in any favor. And we just have to agree that that's the thing that happened. And so it's so corrupt, blatantly corrupt inside of our government. We can see it clear as day in like every fucking aspect of it. And so, and I don't want to, like, there are good people in our government, but you can clearly see corruption throughout the entire thing. So I do not believe that it matters. I believe that we are at a time that we need some serious corrections. We need some serious adjustments. One of them would be getting rid of life terms for anybody in office that serves us, because that's bullshit. Everyone should be cycling through, and we should have people who are, in the current crisis, understanding what it is to be living in the times, working with the problems. And they can be advised by other more wise people, right? But I don't think lobbying should be allowed, and I don't think term limit. I think there should be term limit on everything.
I agree.
But how about you? What do you think that this movie is going to do, positive or negative, moving forward for us as a country?
I hope it does give some other people some sleepless nights, because if we're having sleepless nights over a movie like this, it obviously hit home to us in a deep and real way, and can hopefully have us reflect on the choices that we're making for our political system, and possibly course correct before we ever get to that point. Do you remember the one thing that I said when I left that theater?
No, not the exact words, no.
I felt like this was a love letter to America.
Yes, you did say that. And then I said, I disagree. I think they dropped the ball. That was our and then we said, we'll save everything else for this conversation.
I still feel that way. That maybe they did not get it as effectively to everyone. But as we know, if you are too broad on your message, then there's a whole lot of drop off for who can receive the message.
Yeah.
And I think given the parameters of marketing and that whole can't serve everyone type thing, they got pretty close because we're still all talking about it and we'll continue to talk about this movie for a long time to come.
Yeah. I just hope we don't talk about it like some fictional thing, right? That's my only hope. I just hope we get serious. That's all.
Back to this. I think every single person should watch this movie and come to your own conclusion on it. But more importantly, I think you should allow this to normalize this type of conversation without going straight to you're completely wrong.
Yeah.
Have an open discussion about things. And that's why I think this movie did really well, is start to normalize conversation around this stuff without blaming sides.
100%, brother. I agree. That should just be a way we operate as a human society.
We used to.
We'll get back to it.
We will.
And so let us know what you thought about Civil War down in the comments. Let us know your take on all the things that we talked about here today. Let us know if any other movie, either past or coming up, you'd like us to review. I think we should do a Fight Club video. One of my favorite movies of all time. All the messages in that are insane. But
That would be good. Lastly, tell us what the fuck we did wrong in this episode, too.
oh, they will.
No.
All the comments will. We love you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Till then, the G-Spot is out. You'll find it next time.
Warnings to the Western forces as well as the Florida Alliance.
The three-term president assures the uprising will be dealt with swiftly.